The camera opens on the grim, concrete walls of a maximum security prison. The echoing clang of heavy metal doors sets the tone, accompanied by distant shouts of inmates. In the cafeteria, a group of hardened thugs lounges arrogantly, tossing their trays and laughing raucously. Among them, Steven Seagal sits quietly at the end of a long, scarred table, a serene figure amid chaos. His eyes, cold and calculating, scan the room with the precision of a predator assessing prey. The leader of the prison thugs, a burly man named Vargas, notices Seagal sitting alone, unbothered by the aggressive atmosphere. A cruel grin spreads across his face. Who does he think he is? Vargas mutters to his cronies. They exchange glances, nodding, eager to make a mark. Let's see if this quiet guy can handle a little fun, Vargas whispers, his voice dripping with menace. Within moments, the thugs approach Seagal, their confidence almost tangible. They circle him, their movements predatory, each step calculated to intimidate. One of them, a wiry man with a jagged scar across his face, leans close, sneering. You're new here, huh? Think you're better than us. The other inmates watch with anticipation, sensing that trouble is about to unfold. Seagal doesn't flinch. His face remains expressionless, almost serene. He slowly lifts his head, meeting the scarred thug's gaze with a piercing stare that sends a subtle but unmistakable warning. Underestimate me, and it will be your last mistake. The thug laughs, mistaking calm for fearlessness, and takes a threatening step closer. You look like you could use a lesson in respect, Vargas snarls. The room tenses. The air grows heavy with anticipation. Inmates nearby instinctively back away, sensing the invisible tension radiating from Seagal. For a moment, silence dominates the cafeteria, an ominous pause before the storm. Without a word, Seagal rises. His movements are fluid, almost hypnotic, like water flowing over jagged rocks. The thugs, emboldened by their numbers, lunge at him together. In the first fraction of a second, Seagal intercepts their attack, pivoting his body with unparalleled precision. Arms and legs strike with devastating efficiency, each move calculated to incapacitate without unnecessary effort. The fight explodes into chaos. One thug swings a heavy fist, only for Seagal to twist, using his attacker's momentum against him. The man crashes into a table, plates and trays flying into the air. Another thug attempts a grab from behind. Seagal pivots, sweeping his leg in a controlled arc that sends the man sprawling across the cold, unforgiving floor. The sound of bones colliding with metal echoes, but Seagal remains unharmed, untouchable. Vargas, realizing the situation has spiraled out of control, roars in fury. Hit him, all of you. Don't let him move. His command is met with renewed aggression, but Seagal is already 2 steps ahead. He deflects, parries, and strikes with an almost supernatural timing, moving like a shadow among predators. Each thug who approaches falls quickly, some groaning in pain, others barely conscious, their confidence shattered in seconds. The inmates who had been spectators now scramble for safety, recognizing that this is not a fight they can survive by watching. The cafeteria becomes a battlefield of steel, wood, and flesh, every surface utilized as Seagal turns the environment to his advantage. Chairs and tables become extensions of his limbs, each movement precise, devastating, and merciless. In a quiet corner, another group of thugs plots a sneak attack with improvised weapons. They brandish knives and bats, thinking they can catch Seagal off guard. But the moment they step into his line of sight, Seagal's awareness is absolute. A single swift movement, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, disarms one and knocks another unconscious. The knives clatter to the floor, forgotten, as the remaining men stare in disbelief. Vargas's face twists in anger and panic. He lunges forward himself, the massive brute swinging wildly, fueled by fear and pride. Seagal meets him calmly, shifting his weight subtly, redirecting the raw force of Vargas's attack. With a decisive, fluid motion, Seagal delivers a strike that sends Vargas sprawling across the cafeteria floor, gasping for air. The fight is over before it truly began. Silence descends upon the cafeteria. The only sounds are the shallow breaths of the defeated thugs and the distant clanging of prison gates. Seagal adjusts his posture, his expression unchanged. He looks around, eyes scanning for any remaining threat, his body poised and ready as if anticipating the next attack that may never come. Some inmates murmur, whispering to one another about the man who dismantled Vargas and his crew single-handedly. Stories will spread like wildfire. This quiet man is not just a fighter. He is a force of nature, a legend among legends, someone whose reputation grows with each calculated move. Hours later, word of the fight reaches the warden. He studies the surveillance footage in disbelief. Every strike, every motion is precise, efficient, and terrifying in its mastery. The warden's face tightens. This man, he's not here to play by anyone's rules, he mutters, recognizing that Seagal's presence changes the balance of power within the prison entirely. Seagal, meanwhile, sits in the yard later that evening. The sun dips low, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete. He watches the remaining inmates, their whispers and glances filled with both fear and fascination. He doesn't need to act further. The demonstration was enough. Respect, or fear, will follow naturally. Suddenly, a group of thugs from another block approaches. They had been observing, learning from the earlier confrontation, hoping to redeem their pride by targeting Seagal together. They spread out, moving with coordinated aggression, weapons concealed but ready. Seagal notices them without turning. His senses are heightened, each step and movement predicting their intentions. As they converge, the fight begins again. This time, Seagal's style is even more fluid, almost dance-like in its precision. He uses leverage, redirection, and minimal effort to incapacitate each opponent. One by one, the attackers fall. A metal pipe swings toward him. He deflects it with a flick of his wrist, sending it crashing into a wall behind him. A knife flashes. Seagal disarms the wielder in a single, almost effortless motion. An eerie calm settles over the yard. The remaining inmates stop mid-attack, stunned into inaction. Seagal stands tall, untouched, his expression unreadable. He speaks, his voice low but carrying effortlessly across the yard. This isn't a place to test limits, not for anyone. His words, simple and understated, carry the weight of undeniable authority. From that moment, his reputation spreads like wildfire. Inmates, guards, and even the administration begin to see him not just as another prisoner, but as a force to be reckoned with. His presence alone alters behavior. Thugs who once sought confrontation now avoid his path. Guards treat him with a cautious respect, aware that any provocation could escalate beyond their control. Later that night, Seagal is escorted to his cell by two guards who exchange nervous glances, careful not to make any sudden movements. The corridor is dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls like elongated predators. Inmates peek from behind cell bars, whispering about the man who dismantled Vargas's crew. Some clutch the edges of their cots, knowing they've witnessed something beyond comprehension. As the guards open the cell door, Seagal steps inside without a word. The cell is small, austere, and silent, a perfect environment for observation and reflection. He sits on the narrow cot, closing his eyes, but his mind is already calculating. Each threat in the prison, each alliance, each potential attack, Seagal processes it all, anticipating moves before they can occur. In the shadows of the yard, Vargas recovers from the earlier confrontation. Bruised and humiliated, he glares across the prison, his fists clenching. His pride shattered, he mutters through gritted teeth, "He won't stop. I need a plan, a way to end him before he becomes untouchable." Around him, his remaining men nod, their fear mixed with determination. They begin plotting an ambush that they hope will finally topple the man they now call the Ghost. The next morning, the prison wakes to a tense calm. Inmates move carefully, aware that Seagal's eyes are everywhere. Even the most hardened criminals instinctively avoid his path. Whispers of "don't test him" spread quickly, and for the first time, the usual chaos is subdued by an unspoken understanding. A predator walks among them, and mistakes are deadly. Vargas, however, is undeterred. He convenes a clandestine meeting in the laundry room, a dim space filled with the hum of industrial machines. He lays out his plan with meticulous precision. We hit him where he can't see us. No direct confrontation. We isolate him, corner him, and use numbers to our advantage. That's the only way. His men listen intently, fueled by anger and desperation, unaware that the very act of plotting exposes them to Seagal's awareness. Meanwhile, Seagal spends hours moving quietly through the prison, his presence barely perceptible but profoundly felt. He observes patterns, reads behavior, and identifies weak points in the prison's social hierarchy. Every movement he makes, every glance he casts, is a subtle declaration. He is in control, even when seemingly passive. Days later, Vargas attempts his ambush. He chooses a narrow corridor, hoping to trap Seagal between walls where numbers might overwhelm skill. 15 men await him, their weapons concealed, their anticipation palpable. They hear footsteps approaching, soft and deliberate. Seagal emerges from the shadows, his movements calm, measured. He pauses, tilting his head slightly, as if assessing the situation, the air itself seeming to bend around him. The attack begins with a coordinated strike. One thug swings a chain from above, another charges with a metal pipe, while a third lunges with a concealed knife. Seagal moves with supernatural timing. He ducks, pivots, and redirects the momentum of each assault. The chain whips past harmlessly, the pipe connects with air, and the knife wielder finds himself disarmed and crashing into a wall. Chaos erupts as Seagal becomes a force of controlled destruction. Every strike, every block, is efficient and lethal in precision. A thug tries to tackle him from behind. Seagal pivots, sending the man sprawling into the wall with a bone-crunching impact. Another swings a crowbar, but Seagal intercepts it mid-swing, twisting the attacker's wrist until he drops the weapon, collapsing to the floor in pain. Vargas watches in horror as his carefully orchestrated ambush disintegrates in seconds. "Stop him," he screams, but the remaining men hesitate. Fear, raw and immediate, has replaced their confidence. Seagal is no longer just a man. They see him as an unstoppable force, a living weapon they cannot comprehend. After the fight, Seagal stands alone in the corridor, surveying the aftermath. Injured men groan, weapons lie scattered across the floor, and the silence that follows is deafening. Not a word is spoken, no one dares move. His eyes meet Vargas's from across the hall, and a silent understanding passes between them. The war is far from over, but the balance has irrevocably shifted. The following days bring a subtle but profound change in the prison. Inmates who were once aggressive now defer to Seagal, granting him a cautious respect that borders on fear. Guards notice the difference too. His calm demeanor, coupled with lethal skill, earns him an unusual leniency, though they never underestimate his potential for violence. Vargas, however, refuses to accept defeat. He begins recruiting allies from rival blocks, promising wealth, protection, and vengeance. His plans grow more complex, now involving corrupt guards willing to bend the rules. But Seagal, anticipating every move, subtly manipulates the environment. Pipes leak, shadows shift, and every attempted plot against him falls apart before it begins. One afternoon, Seagal notices a commotion near the exercise yard. A group of thugs has cornered a smaller inmate, intent on asserting dominance. Without hesitation, Seagal intervenes. Moving with the quiet authority of a storm contained, he disarms, incapacitates, and subdues the attackers with minimal effort. The yard falls silent, onlookers frozen by the display of skill and controlled power. The message is clear. Those who prey on others now face immediate consequences. Vargas, infuriated, decides to escalate further. He secures a weapon from a corrupt guard, a metal pipe wrapped with makeshift blades, intending to personally confront Seagal. The confrontation is set in the prison gym, a wide-open space where both strategy and strength will be tested. When Vargas enters, Seagal is already there, performing subtle movements that test his own readiness while scanning for threats. The air is thick with tension. Vargas lunges first, swinging the improvised weapon with brutal force. Seagal sidesteps effortlessly, redirecting the attack and using Vargas's own momentum to unbalance him. A single strike to the shoulder sends Vargas sprawling, the weapon clattering across the floor. The battle escalates into a fluid, brutal exchange of skill and instinct. Seagal's movements are precise, conserving energy while exploiting every weakness. Vargas swings wildly, desperation fueling his attacks, but each attempt is met with control and efficiency. Seagal disarms him again and again, demonstrating not just strength but a mastery of timing and leverage that leaves the attackers in awe. By the end of the confrontation, Vargas lies defeated, battered, and humiliated, his pride completely shattered. Seagal, untouched and composed, stands over him. The lesson is unmistakable. Skill, patience, and control trump aggression and numbers. Word spreads quickly through the prison. Seagal is no longer a newcomer. He has become a legend, a shadow that dominates the psyche of both inmates and staff. Alliances shift, rivalries dissolve, and even the most dangerous gangs tread lightly around him. His presence alone commands respect, fear, and a reluctant admiration. Days turn into weeks, and Seagal's presence continues to reshape the prison. Rumors of his lethal efficiency and unshakable calm travel fast, carried by whispers and cautious glances. Even those who haven't witnessed his skill firsthand are aware. Any confrontation with him is a gamble with near-certain defeat. One evening, in the dimly lit recreation yard, a young inmate named Miguel approaches Seagal cautiously. Miguel is small, wiry, and new to the system. Fear is etched across his face, but so is curiosity. "Are the stories true?" he asks softly. Seagal turns slowly, his gaze piercing yet calm. "True enough to survive," he replies simply, his voice a low, steady calm that carries weight without threat. Miguel swallows hard. I just want to know how you do it. How you control everything." Seagal studies him for a moment, then nods subtly. "It's not control over others. It's control over yourself. Everything else follows." His words hang in the air, profound in their simplicity, a lesson not just in combat, but in life. Meanwhile, Vargas grows increasingly desperate. Each failed attack and ambush erodes the loyalty of his followers. Some begin to defect, quietly acknowledging Seagal's dominance. Others, driven by fear, hesitate during attacks, undermining his plans. Vargas's frustration builds, turning into obsession. He begins to plot a final confrontation, gathering his remaining men and corrupt allies for a decisive strike that he hopes will finally eliminate Seagal. The night of the planned ambush arrives. The prison is quieter than usual, a tense anticipation hanging over the blocks. Vargas and his men move through hidden corridors, armed and ready, their faces grim with determination. They corner Seagal in the maintenance tunnels, a confined space chosen to limit his mobility. Seagal, however, is already aware of their presence. He moves silently, listening, observing, anticipating. The moment they strike, he flows into action with surgical precision. One thug swings a wrench. Seagal catches it midair, twisting the attacker's wrist until he drops the weapon and collapses. Another charges with a bat. Seagal pivots, using the man's momentum to slam him into the concrete wall. The fight escalates into chaos. Metal pipes clatter, fists strike with crushing impact, and the air fills with the grunts and cries of the defeated. Seagal is everywhere at once, a storm of controlled power, neutralizing threats with minimal effort but maximum effect. Each movement is deliberate, calculated, leaving no opening for counterattack. Vargas, enraged and desperate, attempts to strike from behind, aiming to catch Seagal off guard. Seagal, anticipating the move, pivots, grabs Vargas's arm, and uses his momentum to hurl him into the wall with a bone-jarring impact. The fight is over in minutes. The remaining men collapse in pain and fear, their will broken. Seagal stands alone in the tunnel, surveying the aftermath. The silence that follows is deafening. No one dares approach. The lesson has been indelibly etched into the minds of all who witnessed it. Respect, fear, and awe coexist in a fragile balance, all directed at the man who moves like a shadow and strikes like lightning. In the days that follow, the prison undergoes a subtle transformation. Violence still exists, but now it is tempered by caution. Inmates negotiate, alliances shift, and even the guards tread lightly. The name of Seagal becomes a deterrent in itself, a living legend whose reputation ensures that chaos is controlled, if only temporarily. One afternoon, Seagal is summoned to the warden's office. The warden, a grizzled man with decades of experience, regards him carefully. "You've changed things around here," he says, his voice a mixture of respect and caution. Seagal remains silent, letting his presence speak volumes. The warden continues, "I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's undeniable. Keep it under control. Don't give anyone reason to challenge you unnecessarily." Seagal nods subtly, understanding the weight of the responsibility without needing to speak. Outside the office, Vargas watches from a distance, his hatred simmering. He knows that any further attempts to undermine Seagal would be suicidal. His plans are shattered, his followers broken, and his reputation tarnished beyond repair. But even in this moment of dominance, Seagal remains vigilant. He knows that in an environment like this, complacency is deadly. Every glance, every whisper, every movement is observed. He is patient, calm, and precise, waiting for the next challenge, ready to neutralize it before it can manifest. One evening, as the sun sets and casts long shadows across the prison yard, Seagal walks slowly among the inmates. His presence is a living reminder. No one in this place is untouchable. Those who seek to dominate must first reckon with the man who has already mastered control over all else. The story of that first confrontation with Vargas spreads throughout the prison system. Inmates in other blocks, hearing the tale, lower their aggression and avoid unnecessary conflicts. Guards adjust their strategies, respecting the presence of a man whose skill is both extraordinary and terrifying. Seagal has become more than a prisoner. He is a legend whose reputation precedes him, and whose actions have forever altered the balance of power. Late one night, in the quiet of his cell, Seagal reflects on the weeks that have passed. He sits cross-legged, calm and composed, thinking strategically about what lies ahead. The battles may have been won, but in a place like this, vigilance is the only true defense. He knows that threats will continue to emerge, that envy and ambition never sleep, and that his mastery must be maintained at all times. A sudden scuffle in a neighboring cell draws his attention. Without moving from his seat, Seagal senses the tension and hears the subtle movements of the combatants. Within seconds, the fight ends, not by his physical intervention, but by the mere awareness that he is watching. Inmates understand instinctively. The ghost is everywhere, and resistance is futile. Vargas, now reduced to bitter whispers and secret glances, realizes that he will never reclaim his former authority. His attempts to challenge Seagal have only cemented the legend. Fear, respect, and obedience now define the behavior of all who once sought to dominate him. In the final days of this chapter, Seagal walks through the yard one last time, observing the hierarchy he has quietly enforced. Inmates glance at him with a mix of fear and reverence. Guards nod subtly, acknowledging the presence of someone whose control over chaos is absolute. The name Seagal is spoken in hushed tones, a cautionary tale, a warning, and a symbol of unrivaled skill. And in that quiet, controlled dominance, one truth emerges. A true fighter doesn't need to prove himself. His presence, his skill, and his unwavering control speak louder than words ever could. In this prison, and perhaps beyond, Steven Seagal has become a living legend, a man whose reputation, forged in combat and tempered by calm precision, will never be forgotten. Weeks pass, and the prison settles into a tense but controlled routine. Seagal's dominance is unquestioned. Even the most aggressive inmates think twice before making a move. The cafeteria, once a chaotic battlefield, is now quiet whenever he enters. Conversations halt, eyes avert, and respect, tinged with fear, ripples through the room. Vargas, humiliated and desperate, hatches a new plan. This time, he intends to use cunning rather than brute force. He recruits a group of clever but ruthless inmates from other blocks, men skilled in stealth and sabotage. Their goal is simple: isolate Seagal, strike from multiple angles, and make him pay for humiliating them. Seagal, however, anticipates the scheme before it is executed. Through subtle observation, he notices unusual patterns: whispers in the hallways, glances exchanged in corners, and the unusual absence of some inmates during routine activities. Each signal is a thread in the tapestry of the impending ambush, and Seagal quietly prepares, ready to turn their own plan against them. The night of the ambush arrives. The prisoners move silently through the maintenance tunnels, armed with improvised weapons and a calculated confidence. They believe surprise is their ally. Seagal, already in position, waits calmly. Shadows stretch long across the cold concrete floor, the only sound the distant hum of the facility. As the first attacker strikes, Seagal reacts with instinctive precision. A kick sends one man into a stack of crates, a twist of the arm disarms another, and a sudden turn incapacitates a third before he can even land a blow. The ambush collapses within moments, the attackers disoriented and terrified. Vargas watches from the shadows, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He tries to rally the remaining men, shouting commands that fall on deaf ears. Seagal, moving like liquid steel, disables the last of the group, leaving Vargas exposed and powerless. For the first time, Vargas sees the depth of Seagal's mastery. It is not just physical skill but acute perception and control that make him invincible. After the ambush, Seagal confronts Vargas directly. There are no words, only a measured approach that radiates authority. Vargas's pride crumbles as Seagal closes the distance. With a controlled strike, he incapacitates Vargas, leaving him unable to continue his schemes. The lesson is clear: arrogance and aggression without skill are meaningless. In the following days, Seagal becomes a figure of myth within the prison. New inmates arrive and quickly learn the unspoken rules. Avoid conflict with him at all costs. Observe and respect the hierarchy he has enforced. Even the most hardened criminals adjust their behavior, knowing that defiance invites swift and merciless retribution. The administration begins to take note as well. The warden, initially wary of Seagal's presence, now recognizes the unusual stability his dominance brings. Violence has decreased, and prison routines, though tense, are more manageable. Guards move cautiously around him, aware that their interference could trigger outcomes beyond their control. One evening, Seagal is approached by a group of younger inmates seeking guidance. They look to him not merely as a fighter, but as a strategist and mentor. He listens carefully, offering advice tempered with subtle lessons about awareness, patience, and control. His influence extends beyond combat. It becomes a force shaping the social dynamics of the prison itself. Vargas, however, does not surrender to defeat quietly. He continues plotting in secret, driven by obsession. He contacts corrupt guards, seeking assistance, and devises schemes to undermine Seagal's reputation. Yet each attempt is anticipated, countered, or simply fails, further cementing Seagal's dominance. During one late-night routine, a small group of inmates attempts to catch Seagal off guard during yard exercise. They approach stealthily, thinking they can overpower him through numbers. Without a sound, Seagal intercepts their movements. In a fluid display of martial mastery, he incapacitates each one in turn, using momentum, leverage, and precision strikes. The fight is over before any significant aggression occurs, leaving the would-be attackers sprawled and defeated. As word of his skill spreads, even rival gangs in other blocks begin to take notice. They hold meetings in hushed voices, debating how to handle a man whose reputation has become larger than life. Attempts to recruit allies against him fail, as even potential collaborators recognize the futility of resistance. Seagal, aware of his growing legend, does not let it make him complacent. He continues observing, training, and maintaining absolute control over his environment. Every movement, every glance, every decision is calculated. He is patient, methodical, and always one step ahead, ensuring that no threat gains the advantage. One afternoon, a corrupt guard attempts to intimidate Seagal, testing boundaries with thinly veiled threats. Seagal remains calm, his gaze steady. With a subtle shift of his weight, he disarms the guard physically and psychologically, demonstrating dominance without unnecessary force. The lesson is profound. True power lies in control, not chaos. As months pass, Seagal's presence becomes the defining factor in the prison. Violence continues, but it is tempered, structured, and predictable. Inmates and guards alike understand the consequences of defiance. The name, Seagal, carries weight in every corner, a constant reminder of skill, strategy, and unyielding authority. One night, a sudden commotion erupts in a distant block. Seagal senses it immediately, moving quietly through the shadows. A small gang has attempted to assert dominance over a group of weaker inmates. By the time they realize Seagal is present, it is too late. Each attacker is neutralized efficiently, leaving the intimidated inmates unharmed. The control he maintains extends beyond direct combat. Awareness alone ensures compliance. Vargas, now completely marginalized, watches helplessly from his cell. He realizes that no amount of planning or corruption can overcome Seagal's mastery. His influence has evaporated, and he is left to witness the man he sought to destroy dominate the very prison he once ruled. Seagal, walking through the yard during the early morning hours, observes the inmates. He notes patterns, potential threats, and opportunities for intervention. His movements are unhurried but precise, each step reinforcing the unspoken hierarchy he enforces. The prison is no longer chaotic. It is structured around his presence, an ecosystem controlled by skill, awareness, and reputation. As dawn breaks, Seagal pauses at the edge of the yard. He looks over the prison, his expression unreadable, calm, and commanding. Every whisper, every glance, every step taken by the inmates has been observed and accounted for. The message is clear. Dominance is not achieved by force alone. It is maintained through patience, strategy, and absolute control. The legend of Steven Seagal in this prison continues to grow. Inmates speak his name in awe, guards tread carefully, and rival factions know instinctively that challenge is futile. His presence is a balance of fear and respect, a living reminder that true mastery cannot be claimed. It must be demonstrated, maintained, and respected. The final confrontation with Vargas looms silently in the minds of many, but Seagal has already demonstrated the futility of resistance. His skill, awareness, and control have rendered opposition meaningless. He is untouchable, a shadow in the concrete corridors, a force of nature contained within the walls of the prison. Weeks later, the prison experiences a rare period of uneasy calm. Inmates whisper quietly about the ghost, the man who moves like a shadow and strikes with unstoppable precision. Even the most brazen troublemakers hesitate before testing boundaries. The hierarchy, once dominated by aggression and intimidation, has shifted subtly yet irrevocably in Seagal's favor. Vargas, humiliated and desperate, begins plotting his final attempt at reclaiming control. He secretly recruits a new set of allies, tough, cunning men from neighboring blocks who harbor grudges against Seagal. They spend days planning in whispers, coordinating their timing, and preparing weapons hidden from the watchful eyes of guards. Their strategy is simple: overwhelm Seagal with numbers and surprise, leaving him no room to maneuver. Seagal, however, is already aware. His acute observation has noticed every anomaly. Unusual movements in the halls, nervous glances, and conversations cut short as he approaches. Every detail of the ambush is revealed before it happens, giving him the advantage without revealing his awareness. He prepares himself, ready to turn their own aggression against them. The night of the ambush arrives. The conspirators slip silently into the maintenance corridors, confident in their plan. But Seagal, calm and composed, waits in the shadows. The moment they strike, he flows into action with unparalleled precision. One attacker lunges from behind with a metal pipe. Seagal sidesteps and sweeps the man off his feet with a controlled kick. Another swings a chain, but Seagal redirects it into the wall, incapacitating his opponent with minimal effort. Every movement is deliberate, every strike calculated. Within moments, the attackers are either unconscious or retreating in shock and fear. Vargas, watching from the shadows, realizes that his plan has failed before it truly began. Panic and rage distort his face as he rushes forward, attempting to confront Seagal directly. The corridor becomes a blur of motion as Seagal intercepts, blocks, and neutralizes each strike. A final blow sends Vargas sprawling against the wall, leaving him battered, humiliated, and powerless. After the fight, Seagal stands alone in the corridor, surveying the aftermath. The defeated lie scattered around him, a testament to skill, precision, and awareness. Silence falls across the prison, broken only by the faint echoes of groans and the distant hum of security systems. The lesson is unmistakable. No plot, no number of allies, and no desperation can overcome mastery. In the days that follow, Seagal's legend grows further. New inmates arrive, hearing whispers of the ghost, and quickly learn the rules. Avoid confrontation, observe carefully, and respect the unspoken authority. Even rival factions from other blocks refrain from challenging him, understanding that defeat is not a matter of chance, but inevitability. The warden, initially wary of Seagal's presence, now observes the stability he has enforced. Violence has decreased, conflicts are contained, and the prison operates with a subtle order influenced by the man who moves like a shadow. Guards, too, adapt their behavior, cautious not to provoke someone whose skill and awareness make him untouchable. One afternoon, Seagal notices a small skirmish in a remote corner of the yard. A group of younger inmates attempts to intimidate another, hoping to assert dominance. Without haste, Seagal intervenes. His movements are fluid and precise. Each strike neutralizes the threat without excessive force. By the time the group comprehends his presence, the fight is over. Respect, fear, and awe have already been established. Vargas, now reduced to whispers and covert glances, understands that his influence has evaporated. He watches helplessly as Seagal walks freely through the yard, enforcing order simply by existing. Every eye follows him, every movement commands attention, and every whisper carries the acknowledgement of his dominance. Seagal does not rest on reputation alone. He continues his quiet observation, training, and strategic awareness. Complacency has no place in a world where envy, aggression, and desperation are constant. His vigilance ensures that no threat gains a foothold, no challenge emerges unaddressed. Late one night, a sudden disturbance erupts in the infirmary. Seagal senses it immediately, moving through the shadows with effortless grace. A group of inmates attempts to take advantage of a distracted guard, but by the time they realize Seagal is present, resistance is impossible. They are disarmed, subdued, and incapacitated before a single alarm can be sounded. The prison begins to settle into a rhythm dictated by respect for Seagal. Violence still exists, but it is now tempered by fear and awareness. Inmates adjust behavior, alliances shift, and even the guards maintain cautious deference. The name Seagal resonates in every corner, a constant reminder that skill, precision, and control are paramount. In his cell one night, Seagal sits quietly, reflecting on the weeks that have passed. The battles may have been won, but vigilance is eternal. Every movement, every sound, every subtle shift in behavior is observed. Mastery is maintained through patience, awareness, and constant readiness, and Seagal embodies that principle fully. The legend is complete. Within the walls of the prison, Steven Seagal has become untouchable, a force of nature, a master of combat, and a living symbol of control. Every whisper, glance, and cautious step of the inmates reminds them of his power. The ghost has risen, and his presence will never be forgotten. The story of his dominance spreads beyond the prison walls. Tales of the quiet man who single-handedly dismantled the most dangerous thugs circulate in the corridors of law enforcement, in whispered conversations among prisoners and other facilities, and in hushed awe among those who hear of his unparalleled skill. No one dares challenge him. No plan succeeds against him. Seagal has proven that mastery is not claimed by arrogance or numbers, but through discipline, awareness, and precision. The name Steven Seagal is spoken with reverence, fear, and undeniable respect, a legend forged in concrete halls, battle-tested, and immortalized by action, skill, and the quiet, terrifying authority of a true master. The prison, once a place of chaos and violence, is now subtly structured around his presence. Conflict continues, but it is tempered, controlled, and contained by the unshakable dominance of the man they call the Ghost. Every day, every moment, every action reminds all who dwell there. He is the ultimate force, and to challenge him is to invite inevitable defeat. Seagal stands at the edge of the yard one last time, observing the inmates, the guards, and the echoes of a system subtly reshaped by his presence. The sun sets, casting long shadows across the concrete, and his calm, commanding presence dominates the scene. He is a living legend, a master of skill and strategy, and the ultimate symbol of control. This is the man who turned fear into respect, aggression into order, and chaos into a testament to mastery. The story ends, but the legend endures.